The report that didn't match. If you're drawn to stories they don't want told, tap subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment, because once you hear this, there's no turning back. The radio crackled at 3:17 a.m., the kind of hour when even Houston seems to hold its breath. Inside the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's Tango unit, alarms were already screaming. Correctional officers flooded the cell block, boots pounding concrete, flashlights slicing through shadows. An inmate lay face down on the floor of cell 214, wrists cuffed behind his back, cheek pressed into a smear of darkened blood. By the time the prison medic arrived, the man was officially pronounced dead. The paperwork would later call it natural causes following noncompliance. But the body told a different story. His name was Marcus Reed, 36 years old, serving 8 years for armed robbery. Known in the unit as quiet, bookish, someone who kept his head down and his mouth shut. In the weeks before his death, Reed had filed 3 grievances against guards assigned to Tango's night shift. Excessive force, retaliation, threats. Each complaint was stamped, logged, and buried in the system's slow-moving machinery. At sunrise, Reed's body was wheeled out under a white sheet. Official reports noted no witnesses, no camera footage, no irregularities. Case closed before it ever opened. Except someone made a call they weren't supposed to. By noon, Internal Affairs investigator Elena Cruz was driving through the heat haze toward the unit, her jaw clenched, her phone buzzing with messages she ignored. Cruz had been with the department long enough to recognize patterns. The way deaths were smoothed over, the way inconvenient questions vanished into filing cabinets. But this time, something felt off. The call hadn't come through official channels. It came from a blocked number with a single sentence: check the restraints. Cruz met Warden Halvorsen in his office, a room that smelled of coffee and disinfectant. He smiled too easily, sliding a folder across the desk. Tragic incident, he said. Inmate became aggressive. Officers followed protocol. She flipped through the pages. Time stamps contradicted each other. Witness statements were identical, word for word, as if copied and pasted. And the medical report, signed before the body even reached the infirmary, listed cardiac arrest without mentioning the bruising already visible in the intake photos. Where are the cameras? Cruz asked. Halvorsen's smile tightened. Maintenance issues. Unfortunate timing. She walked the cell block herself. Cell 214 was clean now, scrub raw. But when she knelt near the drain, she spotted a faint rust-colored stain that hadn't washed away. In the hallway, an inmate passed her, eyes darting. He whispered without stopping. They told him to stop breathing. Cruz requested the restraints used that night. A sergeant handed her a sealed evidence bag, hands shaking just enough to notice. Inside were standard issue cuffs and a nylon tether. The cuffs were scuffed, metal warped as if forced beyond their limit. And the tether, meant to allow controlled movement, had been tied in a knot Cruz had only seen once before, years ago, in a case that never made it to court. That evening, as she prepared her preliminary report, her office computer froze. Files vanished. The system rebooted on its own. When it came back, Reed's grievances were gone, replaced by a note reading, "No prior issues on record." Her phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. A text this time, "You're looking in the wrong place." Cruz drove back to the unit after dark, parking beyond the perimeter lights. She waited until shift change, then slipped inside with a borrowed badge. The evidence locker sat at the end of a narrow corridor, its door ajar. Inside, shelves were half empty. Evidence tags dangled without bags. On the floor, beneath the lowest shelf, she found a manila envelope she hadn't requested. No label. No log entry. Just a single photograph inside. Marcus Reed, alive, wrists bound, flanked by 2 officers whose faces were cut off by the frame. And scrawled on the back, in hurried ink, were 3 words that stopped her cold. Not the first. Elena Cruz didn't sleep that night. The photograph sat on her kitchen table, weighed down by a coffee mug like it might crawl away if left alone. Not the first. 3 words that turned a single death into a pattern. Patterns meant systems. Systems meant protection from the top down. By morning, she was back on the road to the Tango unit, this time without telling anyone where she was going. Officially, her supervisor believed she was drafting a memo. Unofficially, Cruz was hunting ghosts, names erased, cases mislabeled, deaths folded neatly into statistics. She started where the system expected her not to look: old transport logs. In the last 4 years, 6 inmates had died within the same wing of Tango. Different causes listed: heart failure, seizures. But the same officers' names appeared again and again, always on night shift, always as first responders. Officers Briggs and Nolan. Veterans. Respected. Untouchable. Cruz requested interviews. Briggs declined, citing union counsel. Nolan didn't respond at all. Instead, she found someone else. Inmate Caleb Morris was brought into the interview room in shackles, eyes sunken, knuckles scarred. He had been Reed's cell neighbor, separated by a wall thin enough to carry whispers. Cruz offered water. He didn't touch it. "They killed him," Morris said, voice steady but hollow. He wouldn't stop asking questions. What questions? About the paperwork. About why guys kept getting hurt during routine compliance. He said if enough of us filed grievances, someone would have to listen. Cruz slid the photograph across the table. Morris flinched. That night, he continued, staring at the wall, they took him out for a check. We heard shouting. Then nothing. Too quiet. That's when you know it's bad. Did you see who? Cruz asked. Morris hesitated. His eyes flicked to the camera in the corner, then back to her. I can't say names, he whispered. They'll put me in seg. Or worse. Cruz promised protection she wasn't sure she could deliver. Hours later, as Morris was escorted back, an alarm blared. Lockdown. Over the intercom, a calm voice announced an inmate disturbance. Cruz watched from the corridor as guards rushed past her toward Morris's block. By the time the all-clear sounded, Morris was gone. The report said he'd been transferred for his own safety. The transport log said no vehicle left the facility. Cruz confronted Warden Halvorsen, shoving the discrepancies onto his desk. Where is he? Halvorsen leaned back, folding his hands. You're chasing shadows, he said. This place runs on order. You start pulling threads, everything unravels. Maybe it should, Cruz shot back. That evening, Cruz met with a county medical examiner off the record. She showed him intake photos of Reed's body, zoomed in on bruises hidden beneath institutional language. The examiner swallowed hard. This isn't cardiac arrest, he said quietly. This is restraint asphyxia. Pressure. Sustained. Can you put that in writing? He shook his head. I have a family. As Cruz left, her phone rang. This time, the number wasn't blocked. It was her supervisor. You need to stand down, he said. Effective immediately. She drove home in silence, headlights cutting through dusk. Halfway there, she noticed a sedan in her rearview mirror. Same distance. Same turns. When she pulled into her driveway, the sedan slowed, then disappeared. Inside, her apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. A drawer in her desk was open. The photograph was gone. In its place sat a flash drive. Cruz plugged it into her laptop. A folder opened, filled with video clips dated years apart. Grainy footage from hallways and cells, angles never meant to be seen. In each clip, inmates were restrained, voices muffled, oxygen cut short under the weight of protocol. Officers' faces blurred, but their voices were clear. In the final file, a timestamp from the night Marcus Reed died flickered on screen. The camera angle was low, hidden. Reed was on the floor, gasping. Someone laughed. And then the video froze. A message appeared in white text against black. You release this, you don't make it to the hearing. Behind her, Cruz heard the soft click of her front door unlocking. Elena Cruz didn't turn around. The click of the lock echoed through her apartment like a gunshot, but she stayed frozen, eyes fixed on the frozen frame of Marcus Reed gasping on her screen. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Whoever had entered knew exactly what she'd found. And they wanted her to understand the price of knowing. A voice spoke from behind her, calm, almost friendly. You're not supposed to have that. Cruz stood slowly. The man near the door wore plain clothes, no badge visible, no weapon drawn. But his posture carried authority. Institutional confidence. The kind that didn't need threats to be understood. "You can still walk away," he said. "This system protects its own." Cruz met his eyes. So did every system that ever collapsed. He sighed, like a disappointed teacher. "Then you'll be very hard to protect." By morning, Cruz had made her choice. She copied the files. 3 times. One to a secure cloud server under a false name. One to a trusted journalist she'd worked with years earlier. One she kept on her person. Insurance. She filed an emergency injunction forcing an independent review of all deaths at the Tango unit over the past 5 years. The motion hit the clerk's office at 8:42 a.m. At 9:10, Officer Nolan was reported missing. His truck was found abandoned near the Brazos River, engine cold, door open. No signs of struggle. No body. The union claimed harassment had pushed him to flee. Cruz knew better. People didn't just disappear when pressure came from inside the walls. Publicly, the department released a statement reaffirming its commitment to transparency. Privately, they circled the wagons. The hearing was set for the following week. Cruz arrived early, clutching her notes, scanning faces. The gallery filled with reporters, families of inmates, uniformed officers standing stiff and silent. Warden Halvorsen testified first. He spoke of procedures, of isolated incidents, of bad apples that did not reflect the whole. Then Cruz played the footage. Gasps rippled through the room. The videos rolled, one after another. Different years. Same methods. Same voices. A pattern too clear to deny. When Marcus Reed appeared on screen, alive and terrified, the room went silent. Halvorsen's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Officer Briggs took the stand next. He denied everything. Said the footage was doctored. That inmates were violent, unpredictable. That officers did what they had to do. Cruz leaned forward. "Then explain the knot," she said, holding up the restraint photo. "Explain why it appears in every case. Explain why the cameras fail only when you're on shift." Briggs stared straight ahead. He never answered. By the end of the day, the judge ordered a federal investigation. Tango unit was placed under external oversight. Headlines exploded. Lawsuits followed. Families came forward with stories they'd buried for years. And then, quietly, the narrative shifted. Weeks later, the official findings were released. Systemic failures, the report said. Insufficient training. No criminal charges. Officer Briggs resigned with full pension. Warden Halvorsen retired early. The department promised reforms. Marcus Reed's death was reclassified. Undetermined. Elena Cruz was reassigned to a desk job. No explanation given. Her access revoked. Her calls unanswered. The journalist she'd sent the files to published a story, then took it down hours later, citing legal concerns. 3 months passed. Then a body surfaced near the Brazos River. Decomposition made identification difficult, but the medical examiner confirmed it was Officer Nolan. Cause of death, drowning. No foul play suspected. At the funeral, Briggs stood in the back, eyes dry. That night, Cruz checked the cloud server one last time. All files intact. Still waiting. As she shut down her laptop, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You did what you could. Now let it go." Cruz looked out her window toward the city lights, toward a prison that still stood, still operated, still filed reports every night. She typed a reply but never sent it. Because somewhere inside Tango unit, a new grievance form was being filled out. And somewhere else, a camera blinked on when it wasn't supposed to. They said the truth was buried with the dead. But buried things have a way of coming back. And if you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one.